to a metaphysical realm outside of the human, but within the possibilities of the human. It's a paradoxical notion, but it's one that Nietzsche is asking us to consider. How can we, as humans, transcend ourselves?
The idea of the overman came from Nietzsche's own battle for self-mastery. Human beings in general, he argued, had a duty to rise above the limitations of their own condition. But the original German term he created, Übermensch, can be interpreted in many ways. It is still often translated as Superman. This is a legacy of the Nazi era, when long after his death, Nietzsche was turned into a hero of the Third Reich. Nietzsche's Superman was able to be co-opted into fascist ideology because of the activities of his sister Elizabeth, who re-edited some of her brother's writings to promote the Aryan ideal.
Übermensch dürfen wir nicht verstehen als im Sinn, wie es die Nationalsozialisten missverstanden haben, die ja durch Nietzsches Schwester Nietzsche als ihren Ideologen eigentlich, geistigen Vater für ihre Rassentheorie als Grundlage angenommen haben. So ist Übermensch nicht zu verstehen. Übermensch heißt überwinden, einen neuen Weg suchen, nämlich auf den Weg ohne diese göttliche Figur, die mich hindert am Leben, sondern der Mensch, der in völliger Freiheit neue Wege sucht und in diesem Sinn gottlos ist.
If you translate Superman as the overman, which some people do, the Übermensch, the mountains were in a sense the overworld. They represented for Nietzsche a place of self-transcendence. And their opposite was the land down below, ordinary life, common life, that which had to be transcended.
I am a wanderer and a mountain climber, Zarathustra said to his heart. What returns, what finally comes home to me is my own self. Alas, I have begun my loneliest walk. But whoever is of my kind cannot escape such an hour. The hour which says to him, only now are you going your way to greatness. Peak and abyss, they are now joined together. For all things are baptized in a well of eternity and lie beyond good and evil.
In conceiving of a world beyond good and evil, beyond the fleeting preoccupations of the human condition, Nietzsche had transcended the muck, as he called it, of his own life experience and turned it into philosophical gold. But now, living virtually in total isolation in Sils Maria, he had all but sacrificed human contact for the world of his own imagination. Philosophy had become his consolation for a life of disappointment and deep-rooted loneliness.
My principal article of faith is that one can only flourish among people who share the identical ideas and the identical will. I have no one. That is my sickness. If, adopting a popular manner, I recommend Schopenhauer or Wagner to the Germans or conjure up Zarathustras, these are my remedies. Above all else, they are hiding places where I can lose myself for a time.
But even for Nietzsche, such extremes of isolation eventually took their toll. In 1888, he moved down from the Alps to the Italian city of Turin, echoing Zarathustra's descent from his solitary mountain. Having, as he saw it, liberated humanity from its past, Nietzsche now set about redefining its future. He began formulating a new system of values for a society in which God was no more, a new morality beyond Christian virtues such as self-denial and pity. He called this project, which he hoped would be his crowning achievement, the transvaluation of all values.
What is good? Everything that heightens the feeling of power in man, the will to power, power itself. What is bad? Everything that is born of weakness. What is more harmful than any vice? Active pity for all the failures and all the weak. That is Christianity. Christianity is the religion of pity. We are deprived of strength when we feel pity.
He had these great plans to transvalue all values. That was his project, and the books he wrote, The Antichrist and the Twilight of the Idols, were part of that project. But I do think he had a sense of time running out. I've found certain evidence that suggests to me he was aware of his growing incapacity, of the nature of his illness, and he had some thoughts about his own mortality.
This was a man who died young and spent most of his life dying. So it's entirely understandable that he would have been infused by pessimism, and that he would have a tendency to weirdly align himself with the death of the culture that he was describing. The two became one for him in a bizarre way, and this is why you find him nodding out over the re-evaluation of all values, claiming to have written it in his last book, Ecce Homo, this projected title plan for a 5-volume work, and of course that was never achieved. There you have the pessimism of him never being able to come close to enacting what, after all, was a systematized destruction of systems. That's what he was aiming to do.
The transvaluation of all values. That is my formula for an act of supreme re-examination on the part of humanity. It is my fate that I have to be the first decent human being.
He saw it as his task to prescribe a morality for a civilization that had to live on without any divine sanctions. He was right, so far as he went, to question history, question logic, question all those assumptions that had been made. But when the point came to reconstitute something, the task turned out to be impossible for him. He had an absolutely marvelous mind, but that marvelous mind led him into a cul-de-sac